Recording in progress.
It's a good thing you're here.
See?
August 3rd, 2023, and I will call the Airport Commission to order. All right. First order of business is roll call. Claudia?
Sasser. Present. Perry.
Present.
Here.
McGaugh.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Dietrich.
Present via Zoom.
Domick.
Here.
Now.
Here.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is general public comments, but I am told that we don't have any comments at the moment, so we will move on. The next thing is presentations. We don't have any presentations. So we'll go to the next item, which is approval of minutes. And I think we're approving the minutes from the meeting of July 6, 2023. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Yep.
Does anyone have any changes?
I had just one little typo correction, and it's on page 5, and it refers to NOTAMs, and it should be NOTAM instead of NOTEM. Okay, thank you.
I'll just add that the minutes were very comprehensive and detailed and look really good, so thank you.
Any other changes? So with that one change, we will approve the minutes. Next item on the agenda is public hearing and matters for consideration. The first item on the agenda is the review of hangar rates and nearby airports and discussion of potential hangar rate study. I believe that we'll turn it over to Commissioner.
Okay,
McGaugh.
thank you. Yes, thanks, Marcus.
Nancy and I got together a couple of weeks ago over a cup of coffee or two and talked about some of the data we'd pulled together on the hangar rents and charges of like tie downs and overnight fees at various airports in the locale. And then we met with Dan, who had also gathered some information. So this is the chart that Dan pulled together, and it mirrors the data that we found. And what we were looking to do was try to determine are the rates that we're charging for hangars, the older ones and the new ones, as well as overnight tie downs and that sort of thing, are we competitive with our neighboring airports? And as I was once told by Mike Schutt, who was the primary designer of this airport years ago, that when you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. And what Nancy and I will endeavor to do is to dive down into this a little bit deeper, because it's not just the amount of monthly rent for a hangar. There are a lot of elements in an airport's budget that affect what has to be charged in order to ensure that we're generating enough revenue to end up slightly positive at the end of the year. And so it gets down to other airports. Some may not have the same type of hangar layouts we have. Many airports, such as at Santa Rosa, many of the hangars up there are privately owned and privately leased, not owned by the airport operation. So there are a lot of variables involved, and we really have to get down into the depths of that to fully understand it, to be able to establish, is our competitive position, are we on track, are we overcharging, are we undercharging? So, and that related to the budget and what we have to look towards going forward to generate enough surplus revenue to fund our portion of projects that might not be otherwise supported by an FAA grant. So there's a lot to this, and looking at bare numbers is a good place to start, but it's not the whole story. So we've got to analyze that some more, and that'll take a little bit of doing. But I just wanted to set that as sort of the foundation going forward. One of the realities is with our new hangars, the ones built, pushing almost 20 years ago, they have amenities that the original set of hangars don't have, like sprinkler systems and things like that. So, and those sprinkler systems were part of the mandate with the city zoning and all of that. So that was an upgrade, which obviously we have to recover the price on. So those sorts of variables are the things we have to look at, and that's going to take a while because it's really getting into finding the needles in the proverbial haystack to be able to fully understand what all of that means. So looking at the bare numbers, we're not too far off in some areas. Others we're pretty darn close, but we really need to understand the numbers that are there, and that's going to take a bit. So anyway, I just wanted to establish that. Anyway, that's a comment on that. The other document I have, which was not included in the packet, but I believe we got it from Dan late last year, is about 10 years worth of revenue and expense information in terms of establishing the budget going forward. The document I have starts in fiscal year 2019-2020, showing the actuals, and then projecting forward fiscal year 24-25 out another 4 or 5 years of what the budget would look like, and inputting where we know we have major expenditures in terms of airport maintenance and upgrades going forward. So it's basically establishing the budgeting process, but at a high enough level that you don't get kind of lost in the weeds of each individual accounting item number that you can. Otherwise, if you look at the budget, that can be kind of overwhelming. This is sort of a summary, higher level look. But again, it projects going forward.
And we can, we can have that available, updated by the September commission meeting, if that's
That'd be
okay.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful, Dan. Thanks. So anyway, those are the two documents that we're going to start this effort with going forward. So. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. When you're looking at the rates, are you also inquiring about what their annual increases are? Because I know that that's been a topic of
Yes,
discussion.
indeed. Obviously, that would be part of it. And when Barry and I met with the city manager, Peggy, and the head of the finance department, economic development, that was one of the issues we brought up, is using a standard Bay Area cost of living index increase every year might or might not be appropriate, given that if it's pricing us in a non-competitive position compared to our neighboring airports, the FAA says you can't do that. And they were open to us bringing back data and sharing that with them in future budgeting exercises and processes. So obviously that'll be one of the elements. Yeah, Karen?
I have a couple of questions. The newer ones you say have sprinkler systems, the fire sprinkler
Correct.
systems. The older ones do not. How many older ones do not have sprinkler systems, and how expensive would it be to install sprinkler systems?
We have, of the new hangars, we have 55
That already have the sprinklers.
that have the sprinkler
So
systems.
how many old ones do
And we
not?
have a total of, what, about 150 hangars, I think, total?
I think it's close to 200, I think.
That's what I
total.
said, 200.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
200?
The privately owned and developed hangars, obviously, they have sprinkler systems. They're newer, but the ones, I guess we have more than the 55. We have that plus the original set, so that's probably pushing closer to 90. So anyway, the original hangars from the sort of the gas island down towards the Papa hangar, those were all part of the original development hangars. I think that was in 2 or 3 stages, and they don't have sprinkler systems. But to upgrade those would be pretty expensive because I don't think the water lines exist, the utilities. I'm not sure they exist in the sufficient quantity that you could properly size the sprinkler systems in those buildings. That'd be pretty expensive.
Can we get an estimate? Because that would be a very good upgrade for safety. And I think the fire department would agree with me, and the tenants of those hangars. And then you can always offset by raising their rents, saying that now we've improved them and have upgrades. If my dad has one, he's not going to be happy with a rent increase, but
Yeah.
it would be beneficial to the tenants to have fire sprinklers.
That'd be something to look into, and we'd have to look at the impact on the monthly rent to cover that expense, because the FAA won't reimburse that. That's not grant eligible. So
You can't raise the rents if you make upgrades during the year.
if we make the upgrades, we'd have to pay for that. So that would have to come through increase in rents.
Correct. So it wouldn't cost anything to get an estimate. It's just staff's time. Is that something that we can look into in the next 5 years? I'm just thinking ahead that it would be safety.
Sure. Sure. No, that might be worth looking into, depending
And
on
there
the.
might even be grants. I don't know if they exist, but I know the city's always looking into grants.
So Commissioner Dietrich had previously asked that we look into an alarm system. It's kind of a stopgap. So we did ask one company if that is a possibility. They weren't aware of any systems. They didn't install that kind of system. I think there may be some systems that we can install. As far as the actual sprinklers, I believe it would be easier just to rebuild the hangars. It would be prohibitively expensive to do that. Beyond just the risers that would have to be put in, it would be quite a doing. So, but that could be a possibility in, say, 30 years. 30 years, we may be replacing those hangars, right? Because
Okay.
we're kind of reaching, at a certain point, reach end of life for a hangar row.
How old are they now?
The rows that were, the older rows range from about 30 to 40 years old.
Yeah, the original hangars were built in between 85 and 89. So That's when the airport opened, was 1985, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to my second question. How much does the city receive in revenue from the FedEx that comes in? And do they actually tie down and spend the night, or do they just tie down for a time being and then load up and then fly off again? What do we receive?
From visitors or?
Well, the
sorry.
FedEx for sure, because
Oh,
when I'm
FedEx,
out there with
gotcha.
the grandkids, I know the FedEx is there daily.
The FedEx is charged monthly for 5 tie-down spots
5 tie downs.
for a jet-sized aircraft. Yeah.
Okay.
So the revenue
where is
generated,
that?
yeah, the revenue generated is not a lot. However, it provides more local jobs. It takes trucks off the road, and it makes
Right.
Petaluma.
But where is
Airport-
that? Where would the jet tie down
I think goes in-
down fee be on here?
Parking, I think it just gets put into parking. So parking is a general term for any kind of tie down. That's just the category. That
Actually,
comes first.
I think the question was, what, are they being charged the single tie down rate times 5?
I believe it's the twin jet rate, which I believe is up to
So-
$80.
The $80,
I do believe so. It's 80 times 5.
$80.
We could double check with our count, but
Times 5.
the FedEx is a great partner, and we're very proud to have them.
Well, it's fun to watch them. But they pay for 5 tie downs.
And they also, we do use that space that they use during their weekly routes for things like display day. So that area gets used when they're not using it. So they only really use it about 4 hours per day max.
And they only use it for 4 hours?
And we charge them for 24/7.
Okay.
If I may, I'd also like to interject that that sort of air service is one of the biggest public benefits that the public sees for having the airport, in that we can actually get overnight service from FedEx because of it. So I just want to make sure that we're not just focusing on being penny wise and pound foolish here. Having FedEx Overnight Air Express into the airport is a major public benefit for the city that we get from the airport.
And I'll just add one thing on the back end, that it is a Part 135 charter operation. So the more charter operations we have as an airport may help us with some federal funding on some projects. So it definitely does help to have that activity coming in and out.
That's good to know.
That's a good point. Yeah. Thank you.
Dan, I have one question. You talked about in 30 years, potentially then tearing the hangars down. What is the expected useful life of a hangar?
That is a great question. I don't have an exact number. I know for the roof, you usually can't get more than 40 or 50 years out of a roof. We're going to probably get a little less than that. If you keep rebuilding them, you could get more life out of them. At a certain point, I guess you just have to look at the cost benefit analysis and look at, are these hangars meeting the needs of the tenants? Are there other developments that we need to look at, such as more power in the hangars for charging, electric aircraft, or other needs, some fire suppression, other things that would be of public benefit? So I don't know. My guess would be somewhere in that 60 to 70 year range would probably be the max that you might get without a major rehab that could be cost prohibitive.
If you say the roofs of the structure don't last as long, to replace a roof on those hangars, what percentage of the cost of replacing them? I guess that, the balancing of, your as somebody said, penny wise, pound foolish. I mean, if it's going to cost you 3/4 the amount to replace the roof, is it not better than to consider then going forward upgrade? I'm just curious.
I don't know if we have hard numbers on that, but I think rough numbers on your average hangar would probably be $100,000 per hangar to do a full reconstruction at the high end. At the lower end, we might see a little less, but you would expect to do that at the half-life, most likely, of that hangar row. So that is our goal coming up here as funds get available. After we pay off our loan, that would be one of our first priorities, is to do some hangar replacements at least on the units that need it the most. And preferably all of the older rows would get new roofs over a certain year term. We previously looked at trying to do them all at once, or at least a section all at once. It's very hard to come in year after year, get approval from council, go out to bid. Folks will go like, what's with those roofs? We want to see action on these roofs. So we would probably want to do them all on 1 year. The problem we run into is it's not AIP federally funding eligible, so it would have to come out of our coffers. So we want to make sure it was a year that we had an abundance of reserve to be able to take care of that on our own, but also be able to package it all together to get council approval and do it all in 1 year. That would be the goal. But what that actually ends up being, we'll just have to see.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I'll just make one comment here and looking
Sure.
at it. It looks like the price per square foot, we're definitely sort of at the higher end compared to some of the other airports. And looks like Santa Rosa, 46, and obviously they're a larger airport with tower service and other things, but I don't think all of those hangars have electricity.
All right.
If I'm not mistaken. So given some of the other benefits that we have, it's definitely in the ballpark, but at the higher end. So I would just like to keep a close eye on it, especially every year when the CPI hits, that we just make sure we're not going to be getting outside the ballpark.
Right. Gotcha. That's some of what Nancy and I need to dig into. Make sure we understand all that. Okay.
Any other commissioners have comments?
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item 3 under public hearings and matters. Discussion on temporary suspending the airport commission's standing subcommittee and forming 4 separate ad hoc committees to address hangar rates today, the airport access policy, the hangar waiting list policy, and hangar repairs. I will say that in brief discussion just prior to the meeting that the operations committee, right? The operations committee would like to have one last meeting sometime this month because it's been a while before we wrap up. That's my only comment. And then we can, if we want to open up the discussion, or Dan, do you want to give us a little bit of back?
No, that was just a suggestion based on the conversations from the subcommittees, and so it sounds like the operations is asking for one more, and then projects as well, or
Just projects?
Yeah, we can have one last meeting to wrap up.
I got a couple questions on the ad hoc committees. Is there a limit, obviously, to if you get more than 3 commissioners on the ad hoc, or is it limited to 2? What are the limitations on it?
limited to 3 standing committee members.
Okay. And they're set up with a specified time limit, so if or is it an unlimited time?
Sure. In the thing up past, we'd said, there'd been suggestions to do 6 months, a year, depending on what the needs were. I think there's some of these that may not meet more than once or twice, so I think that has to be determined by whoever is going to be members of these, or at least maybe whoever is going to be leading each of these up. But that would be up to them to determine, but it has to be a finite or a set amount of time.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'll go ahead and open this up to discussion. Do any,
I have some comments.
please?
I think that we need to keep the projects and operations meeting at least a couple times a year so that the ad hocs can then report into them their findings. There needs to be, someone to report to, so I'd like to see them at least twice a year. And then I also noticed it looks like all of the ad hoc committees are operations related, so I was wondering, for example, if we have a project that's going to be building new hangars, how do we create the ad hoc for that? As new projects come up, how do we create ad hocs around those projects? And that's why I think we'd want to have meetings at least a couple times a year.
just to clarify, so the ad hocs would not report to a standing subcommittee, they need to report back to the commission. There needs to be a direct line back to the commission.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the other direction. It's like something comes up,
Sure.
how do we make sure an ad hoc is formed around it and that people get assigned to those committees?
I think their ad hocs could serve more than one particular project, but maybe a very limited scope of those kind of projects. So, yeah, I think they could just be created as you need them.
Okay,
And most of the project discussions will probably happen in the commission meeting
Okay.
itself. So if that becomes an issue, we could reactivate if necessary. This isn't permanent, just, for now. It didn't sound like anybody had any interest because of the limited scope. There's some of those things that fall outside maybe of operations or projects. You're not sure which it is. And so this would help with that. If for some reason you felt like, well, hey, we need to really check back on where all these projects are, we don't feel like we're getting a good enough report during the commission meeting, maybe that's a time where we need to start that again. What staff has found is that we tend to regurgitate everything we discussed here. Not that that doesn't have value, but just in the interest of staff time, making sure that we're being most efficient. That was a suggestion, not a mandate.
yeah, I'm just interested in making sure that commissioners stay engaged.
Yes.
In activities at the airport, and along those lines, is this the time when we will be assigning people to these ad hoc committees, or have they already been formed?
It is up to the commission on how those get assigned.
Okay. That's all I have.
I can tell you who was interested in most in each thing, but it's up to you who you want to.
I'd be in favor of assigning that now, and then at least we get that over with, and then potentially, table a vote on suspending the standing subcommittees unless we could do that now, and just with the exception that we assign a date for a final meeting, and then after that point, they would be suspended until further notice.
Maybe revisit in October. That would give you 2 meetings. So this month's meeting would be projects. September would be operations, the odd. And then maybe if there was interest in then temporarily suspending them, we could put that before the commission in October. Does that work?
I'd be okay with that if that works.
So, I guess the only concern on the operations is certainly that we haven't had one.
I think the last operations meeting we had was in May.
It was in May.
So we're definitely due for one. I know there's some standing issues that we'd at least like to be able to work on. So the sooner we can have an operations meeting, the better. And it sounds like we would be due for one. The one in July was canceled.
Correct.
So it wouldn't be until September. So I think probably the best thing to do is if we could create a special meeting sometime in August, if that works, just so that we can.
That's fine.
Yeah,
reconvene.
and we can use that one so the projects is going to meet then, their next scheduled is, are you scheduled this
It'll be
month as well?
third Wednesday for projects.
Yeah, so projects is scheduled and then operations. So it's possible then that we could both have both the projects and the operations committee meet this month.
Yeah.
And then we can reconvene at the September meeting and discuss and really get into the discussion of whether we feel like we can suspend them or not. We don't need to necessarily wait till October. I think that if we can, at that point, we'll have both had meetings and we can decide.
Okay.
Does that?
Yeah, that works.
I think staff can support we'd have the 16th would be the project subcommittee, and then the 17th, the day after, would be the operations. Does that work?
Yeah, I may have a conflict with that being out of town that week. I'm just not certain at this point, but that's a possibility.
Okay, as long as we have 2.
Yeah.
I think the preference from city manager is to have all meetings in here. So I'll have to take a look at the schedule to see if we can do that. If we can't, we'll have to find an alternative. But I think the intent is to have everything recorded inside here. So we'll try to get this building for those 2 days. I don't know if I can do that. We haven't had that on the schedule for a long time, but let me see what I can do.
Yeah, and understand that the operations that we're kind of jumping last minute. So, I think that the three of us have agreed that we've got flexibility and we'll work with you on that. So if you want to come back with some dates, we'll absolutely work with you
Okay.
and your staff. We want to be cognizant that they've got lives other than this as well.
Thank you, Ray.
All right. do we need to have a vote on the ad hoc committees, or is it, we can?
So just listing them off, hangar rates, I'm assuming Commissioner McGaw, were you going to head that up? And then airport access, did we have a champion for that?
I think that I'd like to see if I could take that
Okay.
on.
Okay, and then the hangar weight policy, weightless policy? Okay. And then Commissioner Dietrich, were you interested in taking on the hangar
Well-
repairs?
Possibly. I was going to ask a clarifying question. Just listed as hangar repairs. The piece that I was interested in the last meeting was trying to understand the process that we were having to use to get that repair under contract and get that completed, and to see if there were any pieces of that process that we needed to either work on with the city or work on internally to try to make these things a little bit more efficient in the future. So if that's the process conversation, I think that might be broader than repairs in general. That might just be our process for how do we accomplish major projects on the airport. And if that's the case, then that might actually be a projects committee conversation, right? Because it's the process for any major project on the field. If it's actually something that's really supposed to be focused on, like, how do we get this specific repair over the finish line? That's probably not what I was interested in championing, but if it was the first of those topics, then I would be willing to do that.
Okay, we can change the name to hangar repair process.
I think it's
yeah.
probably just, but this projects process, right? I mean, we can focus it on the hangar if we want, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that the intention is to have a more robust process for any major thing that might come up on the airport, whether it's somebody drives into the fuel pump, or there's another hangar, or the building, or the fence, or, right? Like any significant activity that we have to accomplish on the field.
Okay, this is as far as a name, just a project process. What name would you like?
Yeah, I think that would do it for me. Does that? I want to make sure that this was supposed to be a question. I want to make sure that was what everybody else was. That matched the recollection for the rest of the group for what that item was supposed to be capturing.
Okay, if you come up with another name, just let me know.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
I have one question for you, Anna. Were you thinking about just projects that are unexpected? Because we know we have, CIP and,
Yes,
project.
yeah, it was that sort of the hangar repair is a great case study for it, right? But I'd like the learning from that to be applicable to more things than just that isolated scenario.
Yeah, probably the hangar door on row 18 is probably a similar situation. So they come up.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I would really appreciate it if Nancy, if you or somebody else that has some of that context and other case studies that we might want to look at could help bring that experience in, because I think I don't want it to just be this one-off. Like, it's a great place to start, but I'd like to have it be a more robust conversation.
Sure. Great.
So we've sort of given who's going to champion. Do any of the other commissioners, there's their interests? I mean, we certainly can have more than one person on this. So Nancy, if you've got something
Yeah, I'm on hangar rates with
okay, so
Tom.
you're hangar rates.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to work on access policy with you.
Okay, thank you.
And I can do the work with Anna on the project process. Not limiting just hangar repairs, of course.
And then certainly I can support Jeff as well.
All right, that works.
So maybe just at this point, all we just need is just a formal, motion to create these maybe, and then a second,
could I-
any opposal.
Sure. Could I get a motion to create these 4 ad hoc committees? What I've got, the hangar rate study, the airport access, and I'm going to call it project process, but knowing that you might change it, and then the hangar wait list.
I'll make a motion to create the ad hoc committees as with the members that have been stated thus far.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Motion passed.
We have to
All
vote
right.
on it. You have to
Sorry.
call for a vote.
Oh, vote. Can we have a vote?
As in, all in favor?
All in favor?
I
Oh, unanimous.
All against?
Nobody.
It's
And I love
unanimous. Thanks, Tom. All right, so we'll move on to committee comment. The first item is council update. Councilwoman name?
Well, it is summertime, so we haven't had a meeting since July 11th. But at that meeting, we discussed the mobile home ordinance and passed it. And then there's water rates increase coming, unfortunately. But with the cost of living, it's kind of, it's reality. And so we'll be bringing that back for a second reading on this Monday. And we also talked about the public safety master plan, which is going to use a portion of the fairgrounds that is underutilized across from the skate park to build a fire police safety headquarters. And we could go up to like 3-4 stories. So we looked at that and we had quite a lot of discussion. Then we saw the McDowell Boulevard North improvements. If anybody's tried to drive down North McDowell,
Oh, yeah.
there's quite the delay all over town. The best bet would go any other way, and Corona's taking the beating because it's the best way to avoid, but it's getting lots of congestion, and the boulevard's got some, I think PG&E is doing construction. So looking ahead to the future, we have our grand jury report response from the staff that will be presented on Monday. I have not even received it yet, so it's coming. And then, of course, I mentioned the water rates, and the police department is it got a huge presentation on their approval for military equipment, and what their uses are and how they're using it, and it's part of the AB 481. So the police will be presenting that on Monday as well. So it's a very full agenda because it's the only meeting we have in August, and then we'll be back in September. And our city manager is on vacation until after Labor Day. So things are a little quiet at City Hall. We're all trying to catch our breath, so thank you.
Thank you for the update. The next item on there is commissioner comment, and I will turn it, Tom, for the projects.
I think we're where we were last time right now. So we'll have to get an update at the last projects meeting. But anyway, leave it to Dan because he has the projects and the
Yeah.
manager's comments.
And then the operations committee, obviously, we didn't meet last month, so we don't have any updates either. So with that, we'll consider that in close. So the next item is staff comment, the airport manager reports. Dan, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. So we're starting to wrap up the fiscal year 23, and we're looking really good. So we brought in about 2.1, just over 2.1 million revenue. 2.1 in revenue, and then we had expenditures right at 2.1. So we still have a good month or two to tabulate all of the outstanding invoices and accounts payable items and also accounts receivable. But that's going to be probably pretty close to where we end the year. I want to stress that this is the operations and upkeep of the airport budget, not to include projects, whether federal funds or airport funds that were put forward towards a project. This year, I think we're right around somewhere between $150,000 to $180,000 for the ramp reconstruction project. So that'll be coming directly out of the airport reserve fund for that project. But as far as operating, we're looking very good. We're positive for now. And we got a lot accomplished in this last year, so we're really proud of that. We'll give you one more update next month on fiscal year 23, and we'll keep charging forward with fiscal year 24. Any questions about the budget?
Yeah, a couple of questions. I noticed that the amount we had budgeted for fuel in the projected budget, we've exceeded a bit so far this year, but we're still down a fair bit from prior years. Is that, do you have any sense of people just aren't flying as much yet? We're not back to it, or what would you attribute that to?
Are you speaking to avgas sales or okay?
Both.
Both, okay.
And jet, yeah.
Yeah, I think jet were actually, as far as, I believe the sales to date might be just slightly low, but as far as the jet fuel, our anticipated purchase of jet fuel, we're actually above where we thought we would be. As far as revenue, on the revenue sheet, we're beyond where we thought we would be. So as far as the expenditure and revenue side, we definitely are buying more fuel and selling more fuel than we thought we would. But
Right.
we are down from the year prior. I
We're
don't know
just down
why.
from the year prior, yeah.
2022, similar to 2021, there were certain months which were a bit of a rocket ship for activity as people came out of COVID. We're seeing overall kind of a settling effect. We don't see as many charter flights. We don't get as many fuelings off of those aircraft. So we're mostly relying on our own tenants who consume jet, and a handful of non-tenants.
Yeah, and we had some pretty rough weather earlier in the year too. So
Yes.
that cut it back a
Which
lot.
that definitely cut into it more than anything else. Avgas sales would drop because of that.
Okay, and the activity of the FedEx, it looks like that's still down in terms of total
little
number
bit.
of loads and tonnage. Is that, we
think
just
it's-
haven't seen as much? Have they cut back, or what have you sensed?
It's hard to tell by the number of trucks. So we still have the same number of trucks coming in, the same number of aircraft for the most part, but the loads themselves, I think, change based on demand. And sometimes that's a good indicator of sort of economic growth and maybe decline. But overall, I think it's probably the average that we've gotten over the last, I'm guessing, 3 or 4 years.
Okay,
Tom, that could be COVID. During COVID, everybody was using
absolutely.
FedEx, so.
absolutely, you bet. You bet. Okay, thanks, Dan.
We would love if there was an expansion of that. We do have room for it, so we're always open to more aircraft and more packages.
Right.
Any other questions about budget? I want to mention one of our biggest headaches recently has been the door on 18C, the 18 row. These are the executive 64-foot wide box hangers. The door came off its track and is now lodged inside of the hanger. So we're working with both the manufacturer of the door and our door servicers to find some options for either rebuilding this door once we can get it down, or total replacement. We don't know what it's going to be yet. The door manufacturer, based on just the pictures they saw, they think there might be a chance to be able to rebuild the door, but the contractor that inspected it and is working on a quote for us was less optimistic on that. So we'll have to see. The good news is we had a departure from one of our 18-row hangars to a private hangar, so we were able to move the tenant in 18C over and give them space so they're not displaced. We should be moving our avionics shop in very, very soon to 18A, and then of course the D is our flight school. So right now nobody's displaced, nobody's being impacted by this severely, and thankfully it's really worked out and buys us some time to undergo what you can imagine will be a difficult process to get this door rehabbed and or replaced, just based on its size and the complexity of the repair.
I have one question, Dan. Do we know the reason for the failure? Is it something that we can potentially inspect on the other 3 hangars to make sure that it doesn't happen at some point on the others?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, yes, that is we do have a current contractor that does our inspections. We are bringing in another contractor to look at that work independently and just make recommendations. We did have them do a safety check when they came out to do the evaluation of 18C. They didn't see any immediate safety concerns. Everything looked okay. However, we want to look at what options we have. There are different options for how the motor lifts that door. And there are some newer systems, and we want to see what's available, what's recommended. And so we will be getting the company out again to take a look at that to make sure that there aren't any existing issues that this could happen again.
I was going to say, if it's an older design that, we might want to look at retrofitting the other 3 doors as well at the same time, just to, if there's a way to prevent damage or anything like that from happening to the other 3, it'd probably be better to do it now if possible.
They are, yeah, exactly. That's what we want to do, prevent. I don't think this could happen again. It is a bit of a fluke thing. Even the door company's never seen one quite this bad. With that, though, we want to make sure that there isn't a chance of this happening again if we can. And the doors are 20 years old, or just about 20 years old. But we are hoping and insist on getting more than 20 years out of each door. So we would hope to get double that realistically with a hangar door. Any questions on that? And as we get numbers, we'll bring those before you. I'm hoping it won't be a 6-figure repair, but it could be. We're preparing for it.
Do you have an estimated time when it could be completed?
I don't. I was trying to get an ETA for a new door being made. Worst case scenario, what that would take, and then the manufacturer hasn't been able to get that to us yet. But my guess is it won't be any sooner than 6 months.
And if it is going to be a high dollar, is this something that then is going to have to go out to bid? Are we going to have to go through that process?
Not the door itself. The door itself could just be a direct purchase because we would sole source it. We talked to the door servicers. There's only one door that'll fit in that opening. There's only one known door and it's the original manufacturer that makes those. So because of that, we shouldn't have any issues sole sourcing that door. The labor is where it could get tricky. So we have to take a look at what that is and what kind of quotes we get for that.
Okay, yeah, just the concern is
Yeah.
the,
No, we find ourselves back here again and again, and we're getting better at this. I think, and to this, I had this later on the non-CIP list, but we can just jump into it. The thing that seems to work the best is we can't go out to bid with anything until if it requires any kind of engineering or design, we have to have that prepackaged, right? So moving forward, we need to have a design engineering firm that can prepackage these projects into something that we can bid out. It's not something we can do internal. We just don't have the resources to do these for the airport. Usually, especially if it's AIP related or large enough, Mead Hunt can do those for civil. The problem is this isn't a civil project. Most of it goes to structural engineering on buildings, and that's not something that Mead Hunt does. So they gave us the recommendations. We checked a couple companies out. They didn't. So far, we haven't found one, but we're still looking. But that is seems like the fastest way to get this done is to get them under contract for design. Then we can put that out to bid, and then we can get that work done. So, but until we get that component, that design and the engineering, that's what complicates the hangar project. It is structural. Those beams are structural, and we can't just have any contractor just slap them back in. And we need a structural engineer to come up with design for that plan.
okay, thank you.
All right. So with that discussion about engineering, we did lose our engineer who was assigned to the airport. We're looking, as quickly as we can to try to backfill that position. But until we can, any additional side projects that we were trying to work on that are on our airport CIP list kind of have to take a break. So thankfully, it doesn't really impact us. There's no large impacts. The only one that we were actively working on that it's going to affect would be the safety zone improvement grading, improving drainage. That's the only one that's going to have to take a little break. I don't know how long. We might be able to get somebody else on that, but yeah, just bear with us as we reshuffle and get some more support. As far as that project, the drainage, we are making some progress with it. The next step will be to try to get a design contractor to, once again, get a design so that we can package this out to a bid, because the actual grading work and repair work to that drainage would require a bid. So we're working on getting design for that particular project. You're seeing the pattern. With all that bad news, or let's say less than ideal news, I'm very proud of what the progress we've made on the rehabilitation of the airport parking apron. I'm sure it's hard to ignore all the slurry sealing. We did a double slurry seal on not only the main project area, but that lead-in area. That there was some surface damage that was caused by the trucking operation that got all that material to the site. So we had the area right next to the fuel island slurried, and it's still a little soft, but it's hardening up, and it's going to be, I think it'd be a good improvement in that area. But overall, I think the whole ramp area looks really good. We do have to wait 30 days from seal to paint, so we're on our first week of 4 weeks of waiting for that, and we'll get our painter in. They'll put all the center lines back in, all the markings, all the numbers, and it'll be a tie-down area once again. With that, we're thinking about putting out a advertisement to some sort of publication or media that's broader than just maybe Sonoma County to see if there's any interest in tie-downs. We know some airports are completely booked up for tie-downs. I think Auburn's a good example of that. Looking at other airports, there's a varying interest in tie-downs for obvious reasons, but we think this is a good time to advertise a new ramp with a restaurant that's returning and all the benefits that tenancy at the airport provides. So that's something we're moving towards. Let's see. I think I already talked about Taxiway Alpha last time. We did get the grant for $222,000 for design. And the best news of all is it does not use our entitlements, so we're really excited about that. So we get to pay for the design for Taxiway Alpha, but it doesn't cost us our yearly $150,000 in entitlements. So that gets to roll over to fiscal year 24, and we didn't use any of our, I think the 24 may roll into 25. But anyway, we saved $150,000 that gets rolled over, and so we're excited about that. We're very close to submitting the application package to the FAA for the taxi lane Bravo. We were waiting on one last item that got kind of caught up in our staffing issues with engineering, but we got that back today. We'll be reviewing it and then kicking it out today.
One question
Yes.
on the AIP process. With the reauthorization, the Congress recently voted for the FAA reauthorization. I haven't seen if there's been an impact on the size of grants or what's in that fund that would be eligible for us to draw from. Have you heard, has that gone up, down? Is it holding static? Have you ever heard anything?
I haven't, no. And unfortunately, we used to have annual meetings with the FAA on our projects as part of the ACIP program. Since we're not a 139 airport, we no longer meet unless there's a request to meet by the ADO. So that's something we'll have to figure out over the next 6 months of what impacts those are. We'll talk to the ADO and see if that does impact us. We'll continue to submit our ACIP plans for each yearly cycle to make sure that that all of our projects are on the FAA's radar And we usually will get feedback from them whether there are particular items that are going to be more difficult to fund for a particular fiscal year.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, as mentioned, we will be submitting the application for Tax Lane Bravo rehabilitation soon. I think Tax Lane Bravo might be the easiest to do as far as the construction portion because of the amount of BIL funds that we have rolled over that are completely separate from our entitlements. So we are excited about that. And those might kick off together, but they might be independent. And if they are independent, I think Bravo has got a better chance of being fully funded if there are any issues coming up. Fuel Farm is on hold. We don't have any immediate issues that we have to attend to. They're just some more PM preventive maintenance and some items that are less than ideal that we have to address. One big change we had recently was that we had to repair our overflow valve. So when we receive deliveries, there's a physical overflow valve that stops the fuel from going in to prevent the whole thing from overflowing. We adjusted it when we replaced it, and that adjustment has made the amount of fuel that we can take at a lower level before it starts to activate that valve. And what we had one time, and you remember the gas out we had, that valve got activated, unfortunately, at a level that it really shouldn't have because it's a bit lower, and it meets spec, but it is lower than it was. So we're very confident in our repair contractor. They said, this is the way you want to do it. This is the safest way. We said, okay, let's do it the right way. What that means, though, is we take smaller loads. So now we're only taking maybe 5,000 or 6,000 gallons at a time instead of 8,000 or 9,000 gallons at a time in our tanks. But that's good because it costs us a little bit more per load because we get charged the same delivery fee. However, we're ordering more often. And what more often means is more buffer, so that even if we had a very popular weekend where we came in and said, hey, the price of gas is great, we're going to grab some gas, we're not out of fuel. So we don't have that. Before we were kind of playing the numbers, trying to get as close as we could to get that full load, but we don't have to do that anymore. So in one way, it's not ideal, but the other way, I think it's going to be better for everyone because we can predict better how much fluid we're going to have at any moment in time. So hope that didn't confuse anybody. Just want to update on the airport power backup. I know we hadn't talked about this a lot in the last 6 months or so. We went out to bid with the county for renewable fuel, and there are several bidders. So it looks like we are going to have access to renewable fuel, not renewable diesel, not to be confused with biodiesel. That was something that we've been working on for, I think, over a year now to get access to renewable fuel and potentially eliminate all regular diesel. It would all be renewable diesel for the city. And so we're really excited about that because that not only powers the airport diesel vehicle, but it could also power a generator that never gets used unless it's emergency, other than just testing. And so it is something that we are interested in looking to. We want to go electric as much as we can, but there are some use cases where diesel makes so much more sense, and it especially for vehicles or in this case equipment that never runs. It's just that there is emergency. Renewable diesel is 30% cleaner than normal diesel. It has a 10-year shelf life, which is great for our generators that can just sit with their tanks full. So it's something we're looking at. It's not for sure yet, but it's something we are looking at for possibly power backup. And that's something council would have to approve. But I think it might be a good stopgap measure until electric becomes a realistic option for a small system like Petaluma Airport. Because our panel is so small, because our needs are so small, the size of system and the cost of the system, even with our small panel, would be probably cost prohibitive, what we've seen so far. I think some of the numbers we were looking at was close to $500,000 for probably a system to do what we wanted, all the things we wanted to do to have power backup with, that was a sustainability project. That could still work. We can still do that potentially, but as a stopgap measure, we wanted to make sure that generator was completely off the table before continuing with other options. We're not the only site that needs it. There's at least four sites in the city that do need power backup that don't necessarily have the room to put solar panels and the battery storage that would be necessary for 24/7 backup. So something we're looking at, but we're very excited. At a bare minimum, just be able to go renewable diesel also helps out the marina. And I believe all of our buses might already be running on renewable diesel through the school district. So very excited about that.
I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Do we have a plan for this year's fire season? I think last year we
Do.
rented.
We
Okay.
have a generator.
Okay,
It's ready to go.
okay, thank you.
At a cost just over $7,000, I believe, for the season. So we have 3 months of rental. That's all I have on current CIP and non-CIP projects. Any questions about projects I didn't discuss or cover?
Anyone have questions?
Thank you.
Are you-
I've got one question on the budget. I noticed, I think we brought this up last month, but the portion of the property tax and hangar tax that we pay was way over what we estimated. I mean, hallelujah, it's way over, but were you able to find out why that it was so much higher this year?
Not yet. It is something we're still looking into. I think it was 20,000 more than, I think we're anticipating
Yeah, it's
70. I
way
think it
up,
came in at
but-
90. So
Yeah, and it's 162, I think. We'd projected 90.
doesn't take very many aircraft, business aircraft, to make up the difference there. So that could even be just the jets alone.
Yeah, okay,
But we'll look into it. Unfortunately, we don't get a breakdown. I wish we did.
okay. Just thought I'd ask.
And I'll just add, the county did just mail the property tax bills, so you might get your answer if you haven't.
There you go.
If you haven't opened it yet.
Should we
We thank you
recommend
for your
people
contribution.
be sitting down? I have one question, thinking back to the last meeting, you gave the presentation, the 2-Niner Diner sign.
Yes.
Do you have any updates on?
Yes.
The sign?
Thank you for bringing that up. A couple things. Yes. So the official airport sign, I believe the vinyl sticker, if you will, the vinyl sign that we'll be putting up is made. They just need to install it on both sides. They do have that the original sign that's been put out there temporarily. I did mention them that I would ask the commission if the commission was okay with having that up till, say, November, to give them plenty of time for, I don't know what the start date is officially. I still haven't received it. Oh, we have news. So with that, I was just hoping maybe at least 2-3 months to have the extra sign out there, get them everything they can, maybe even utilizing the Papa's sign to whatever they need. We're just trying to help them out. So is that okay is there any objections to that, to keep that
No,
till November?
I did speak, Nate spoke to me in the past about using the Papa where we hang up the display day signs, and I said, you absolutely can use it. I just need it for the 1 week, and you can have it the rest of the time, and I'm happy to, once you're open, and, we'll put the food truck here or whatever, so people come in and think that there's food, but as an update, the tentative update is display day in August. So, sorry, I had to get the 19th of August is what Nate's shooting for. I spoke to him on Monday. He reached out to me. He says he's got one more thing to finish up with the city. As long as he can get that complete, then he's planning on the 19th for display day. So, from our perspective, the Papa, when we are promoting display day, we will be announcing to anyone and everyone we can that 2-Niner Diner is going to be open and available. So he's close and he's looking forward to it, and he's very excited, and I'm really excited to have him too, because I think if he opens up, the 19th could be a very, very busy day for display day and a long line at 2-Niner Diner. There's a lot of pent up 2-Niner Diner need that's going to come out.
Great. Yeah, as soon as we get official, they did say that the 19th was not official in the last correspondence. So I just, just make that clear.
Yeah, he said that's his plan.
Okay,
And he said he'd get back to me, so I guess in about 10 days and confirm it. But that's what he's shooting for, and that's what his goal is there. I think he's got everything in place except for the last bit to do with the city for the sign-offs. And if he can get that done, then he's set. So he's trying really, really hard.
great. So the
Yes,
airport,
as
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, as a help wanted sign above his sign out there on Washington Street. So
Yeah.
if you know anybody who needs a job, busboy,
Help wanted.
tell them to call Nate.
Yeah, so obviously we'll send out to all the tenants the announcement. I'm sure Papa will maybe put a blast. We'll hope to get some coverage from the Argus and maybe the Press Dem. And then we might be able to get some sort of advertisement about the airport out. I'm not sure if we can we'll try to do it through social media. Potentially, I need to talk to our folks internally, what we can do to promote that maybe a little bit more using some of our advertising budget. But I'd like to push something out publicly that announces the airport as the airport and maybe a few things, but also the opening of the diner and try to generate a little bit of buzz over that.
How do we get it put back in, like, when you do a search for the airport that lists the services, and you get AirNav, what's the process of getting that? Because it probably says that it's closed. Is it something that we as the airport have to notify for, like, AirNav or anyone that service is available?
I believe
Does anyone-
any user can report it open.
Okay,
Yeah. We haven't showed it closed on the website for quite a while. Obviously, we'll change that. And hopefully, within about a month, we're trying to get our website, our new version of it pushed out. Nothing super fancy, but we're trying to make it more functional. And that is something that we're trying to get out in September. So that's our goal.
okay.
Also, make sure to get it on the visitor centers. They have a calendar that goes out, and they just put out one for August that they emailed to me today. So I know that if you get it in there, and if they see it, they'll put it out there. So I don't know if you need to write a press release. I just thought about it.
Yeah, we can get it in the newsletter. We can also have it just posted right on the social media
Yeah,
Facebook
but if you
page.
send it
Yep.
to Marie at the visitor center,
Oh, gotcha.
she'll be sure and include it with all the information that goes out about all the things happening in Petaluma. And it's a pretty quiet month.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of festivals or anything. So that would be a really good,
Yeah, I'll
I
give
didn't
Maria a
even
call.
think about it, but that would be a really good way to advertise because that's what they are receiving TOT funds for, is to promote Petaluma. So take
That's a great
advantage of
suggestion.
the
Yep.
visitors program.
Thank you.
I have one other question, not to do with 29er Diner. We talked about the comm runway. Have you gotten?
I submitted the form and I checked it just, I think, last week and it still hadn't updated. So I'm going to go back and figure out what happened. But we did submit it officially.
Okay.
We
yeah,
are a registered user of the system and we submitted it and they didn't put it on there. So
Okay.
Southwest region. Yeah.
I know, I was.
Thanks for the
looking-
reminder.
Looking at when I tapped on my
Yeah.
airport on my thing, and I'm like, well, I'll give some, but not all.
We also changed the wording instead of old Adobe to just Adobe. They dropped the old off of there. That was a request from former Commissioner Lawrence.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Does anyone have any of the commissioners have any questions, comments? Okay. Well, I see it's 7:07, and I'd like to thank Commissioner Dietrich for showing up on Zoom. Commissioner Dietrich, please go enjoy the rest of your vacation. Thank you for joining us. And at this 7:07, I will adjourn the meeting. We'll see you in September. I'll get the months right one of these days. Thank you.